5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here comes the sweat.
All right.
Oh God,
thank you,
stop.
everybody. Thank you.
Wow.
Live studio audience
Live studio
today.
audience.
Yeah, the sweat is here. Thanks again, everybody. You are there. We are Jessie. Or you're Jessie.
I'm Jessie.
I'm Emerson. I mean, I would much rather be you than me.
I know you are.
We're bringing you nightly fantasy sports advice you absolutely cannot live without. Trust me.
Or get anywhere else. You really just can't.
That's
Here
true.
Here is the place to be.
Every night.
Or you can go ahead and trust these guys instead, though. Don't trust us. Say hello to our football panel, DK Live's Reed Fowler and Steve Buchanan, Ryan Newton of the Quant Edge, and Anthony Amico from the Action Network. Quad box off the top. Let's go.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. It's time we discuss which key injuries will have a major fantasy impact this weekend. Dr. P's usually here, but I guess he actually has, like, important
He's in Paris,
stuff to
probably.
do. Yes, he is. Starting with Bengals wide receiver A.J. Green. He's out at least 2 games with a toe injury. We know that'll impact Tyler Boyd, but who is actually having a breakout season for Cincinnati, in case you didn't know. But could this finally be the week John Ross, who's going to cost you $3,900, the 9th overall pick at last year, becomes part of the Bengals offense here, Reed?
Well, I think he has to by default, but in terms of playing him, I don't know in terms of how much we trust a guy who he himself has had so many injury issues over the past couple of years. I mean, when you look at this offense, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, A.J. Green accounted for a ton of production, not just for Andy Dalton, but even Joe Mixon. Now, all you have to do, in my opinion, is stop Joe Mixon, and you're really going to be able to halter this offense moving forward. If you look at what he was able to do in the red zone, he was targeted 50% of the time in the red zone, 35% across the middle. Those are money spots for receivers, especially this year against bad defenses. The only thing that I like about John Ross is that Cincinnati's defense is terrible. So it's going to have to keep some of these skill players in these games like John Ross, like Tyler Boyd, who might get an increase in targets. But I think he's a little better with A.J. Green in, remains to be seen. But I'm not necessarily going down to pay for John Ross.
Anthony, would you go down and pay for John Ross? We're feeling like he's going to make an impact now?
No, I mean, I think that Reed nailed it. Like, Ross has been hurt a ton. He's already missed multiple weeks with a groin injury, definitely something that can linger. We know that Green's injury opens up 26% of the team's targets, but it's just really hard to see a lot of them going Ross's way. I mean, I think that he needs to really prove that he can stay on the field, and a lot of these other guys, I think, can still make plays. I mean, Alex Erickson has been there all year. C.J. Uzomah has been good all year. I just don't really see a reason that they're going to force feed Ross all these targets fresh off an injury.
Hey, Nooner, what are your thoughts on John Ross here? Do we feel like he can make an impact, maybe with A.J. Green out here? Do we got his audio? Come on, you got this. I believe in you.
Do we have the champagne flowing over there today?
Oh, come on. It looks like you're the one drinking, bud.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm with kind of the crew here. I'm not super interested in John Ross. I know obviously the Bengals certainly hope that they can get him involved here. In reality, though, from a GPP perspective, it's about as good of a spot as Ross could possibly ask for, given his skill set. The Saints have been stout against the run. They have allowed 33 pass plays of 20-plus yards in the season, and they rank 31st, according to Football Outsiders, defending the deep ball. So he doesn't have to deliver a ton. Not a super safe play, nothing I would want to do in cash, but I think getting a sprinkle this game that's got a game total of 54 points is not a bad way to go in GPPs.
Steve, you like him for GPP? I mean, this defense he's going up against gives up some big plays.
I mean, I'm that idiot that only plays GPPs. I never play cash, so of course I'm going to like John Ross in this spot. I mean, we're talking about him like you're going to have to pay so much for him. He's only $3,900, and he's going against a bad secondary with the Saints here. I mean, Tyler Boyd by far has the best matchup out of any of the receivers here out of the slot, going up against P.J. Williams, who's just been absolutely atrocious in that type of coverage. But I have no problem taking a shot on Ross. He was only $3,900. He's a guy that's going to have to be forced into some targets because their top target guy, A.J. Green, is out of the rotation here. So I have no problem using Ross in GPPs. I will be doing so myself. I mean, let's be honest, some of the crap that we've played for chalk already this season, Ross is certainly not on the list as being as bad as some of the other plays we've done already. So I have no problem taking him here.
Yeah, and Steve mentioned something really important there too. Boyd staying in the slot is very important. If he goes outside and goes up against Lattimore, I don't think he does as well. And so if you want to use that sort of narrative to also play John Ross, make sure that if Tyler Boyd goes out to the outside, then that's a lot of danger for him going up against what seems to be now a team defense that is getting a little bit better against the pass. Not good, just a little bit better.
All right, guys, Patriots running back Sony Michel, 5,300. Seemed close to returning to the lineup this week against Green Bay before ultimately being held out. Now, the Patriots are said to be optimistic
Yes,
that he will suit up Sunday against the Titans on the road. So how much would you trust him fresh off of this injury, Ryan?
I don't think there's any need to trust him here. We know the Pats are smart. They're continuously playing chess while 90% of the league is playing checkers for sure. They just don't need to rush him back, in all honesty. I mean, to force a heavy workload here just doesn't make sense. James White has been outstanding. Luckily, Cordero Patterson has come along and really helped to lighten the workload on James White. I do think if he's available, they'll work him back into the game plan here. I just don't think we need to roster him until we can safely project 15-plus touches for him, and I just don't think this is the spot.
Reed, do you agree? You feel like you don't really need to trust him in this situation?
Yeah, you don't. I mean, I get Tennessee is bottom half in rush DVOA, and Tennessee can't stay in the field, right? I mean, they run the fifth least amount of plays, or the fifth slowest team, running about 60 plays. But the play here really, like Ryan said, in terms of trusting, is James White. We see how safe of a floor he does have, especially for cash games. But the play really is going to be a Brady and Gordon stack. I mean, go up against Malcolm Butler. You know, there's a lot of cross references here in terms of the Patriots and Tennessee. And we might have seen, or the Patriots might have seen, the writing on the wall with Malcolm Butler. He's getting burned left, right, and center. And so if you want to take a matchup and trust someone, it's got to be a Brady Gordon or Brady Edelman type stack for me, as opposed to trusting Sony Michel. We don't know. He had a lower body injury. We don't know how he's going to respond yet. Where his value is in those 20-plus carries. We don't know if he's going to see that yet. But Ryan's right. These guys play chess when everyone else plays checkers. And so even for us, hard to trust a guy like Sony.
I mean, Steve, a lot of people might be staying away from him because of this injury. Could be a little contrarian there, maybe?
I know, you're trying to play to the heartstrings here, the GPP. I see how you connive your way here. But look, he's coming off a 2-week absence, and it's a bad matchup. I mean, the Titans' defense have allowed the least DK fantasy points to rushing, only to the Bears and the Steelers, who have allowed less. I mean, this is just not the matchup for it. And the emergence of Patterson, while Patterson's not going to make a big difference, it does help them being able to ease Michel back into this, because we've seen that Patterson is capable of what he can do in the run game here. So that certainly helps them there. I mean, he's definitely not a cash consideration by any means. There is some GPP. There's no GPP appeal either, because he doesn't get any work in the passing game either. So I'm just staying away completely from this one.
Anthony,
the win goddess.
Oh, yeah, me. That's me. Yeah.
Yes, here, hold on.
Everybody can.
Yes.
Okay.
There she is.
Apparently, everybody can see right through me. So, Anthony, I was going to try to pull your heartstrings too, but I'm going to take a guess and say that you're also not going to trust Sony Michel here.
Yeah, and I mean, it really doesn't even have to do with the injury for me. I mean, the Patriots, like Ryan said, they don't have any incentive to let him play if he's not ready to go. So I imagine if he's out there, they're going to use him in his normal role. But, you know, like everyone has said, the matchup is poor. The run defense is decent, at least compared to their pass defense for Tennessee. They run the least, or they're one of the slowest teams in the league. There's just no real incentive here, I feel like, to play Michel, especially when Patterson has been, usable, and James White's been awesome.
All right, here we go. Jaguars running back Leonard Fournette practicing again today in full, so looks like he's finally on track to return as Jacksonville travels to Indianapolis on Sunday. $6,300 is what he will cost you. What are your expectations for the not-so-pliable big man here, Reed?
I mean, not much. This guy's coming off of multiple hamstrings. I mean, your boy, we've seen how fragile this guy is. And when you look at Indianapolis, these guys give up a ton of targets and receptions, third most to opposing running backs. And that's really not Fournette's game. It really is setting up to be more of a TJ Yeldon game, setting up to be more of a pass-heavy game in terms of that. Now, to see, like we talked about, right, GPPs, it could be a nice play because of that sentiment that he's getting injured, or he has a susceptibility to be injured in the first 10 snaps that this guy gets. Having said that, yeah, at that price tag for GPPs, absolutely cash games, not at all. I'd rather play a guy like TJ Yeldon getting that safe floor with receptions and targets, as opposed to hoping that a guy gets 15 to 20 carries off a hamstring, a re-aggravation. And when you get re-aggravations, I've been told, because I'm not a doctor, that it's easier to obviously injure those re-aggravations. So I'm not trusting him for cash at all. GPPs, I'll be underweight.
All right, thank you, Dr. Fowler. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Anthony, would you rather play Yeldon over Fournette not really knowing how Fournette's going to hold up?
No chance. I mean, we have precedent here for Fournette missing time. I mean, the guy's always hurt, so we know a lot about how he responds to injury. I mean, last year he had about a month gap in between games due to injury. Saw 17 carries and 4 targets in his first game back.
Nice.
Jacksonville obviously is not doing great in terms of their record, but it still doesn't seem likely that they'd risk Fournette after all this time if he wasn't ready. And 6,300 is a great price. I mean, Fournette owns plus 7.35 plus minus and a 75% consistency rating when he's priced at $7,000 or less, according to Fantasy Labs. I think it's a great play this week.
All right, so what you're telling me is Reed is an idiot. Okay, Steve.
He's a doctor.
Yeah, and a doctor. Steve, what would you do here, man? Would you is he worth risking rostering here at this price?
I mean, he's like the new Jordan Reed. I mean, like, he gets on the field for a couple plays and then he's back out again. I mean, it's just hard to trust him. And the problem is, though, it's that it's a decent matchup. I mean, the Colts really aren't that great against the run. They're not terrible, but they're not great either. But the thing is that with TJ Yeldon, like these guys mentioned, I mean, he's still in play here. Even with the 2 games that Fournette was active, Yeldon still was averaging just under 20 DK fantasy points with a touchdown scored in both games. He just gets so many targets. He's a great PPR play here. So I don't mind Fournette and GPPs. I'm definitely not going heavy on that, but 6,300, decent matchup. It's not bad, but, just kind of like with Sony Michel, you can't expect a full workload here. And then, like I said, Yeldon's still in the mix here. He's still a big part of this offense.
Nooner, I can't expect this guy to be that chalky, right?
No, he can't be. My expectations, kind of like most of the crew here, I think are fairly low. Jacksonville's run game has really been disappointing. They spend a lot of money in the offseason and went out and addressed the O-line in free agency, and they've been pretty disappointing. Bottom 4 in both second level and open field yards created. You can contribute that stat as much to the running backs as the offensive line. And we're also not talking about Carlos Hyde here, who was definitely part of the mix now that he's in play. Fournette hasn't had to deal with that. I mean, this team got steamrolled last week, split 8 carries among among Hyde and Yeldon. It just isn't a really great situation. And if you look at this game from just reversing engineering it, I really like the Colts here. So this could set up for some negative game script as well on the road. Both these teams coming off of a bye. I just don't think it's a bell cow week for Fournette.
All right, guys, thank you for your assistance. We'll play some NFL high or low with you coming up. Plus, we're going to peep tonight's NBA slate right after the latest on Dez Bryant finding a new home.
Looks like Dez Bryant finally has a job. I'm Brendan Glasheen with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Multiple reports say Dez is signing with the New Orleans Saints on Thursday. Adam Schefter adds the deal was for 1 year. In other words, he's on board through the rest of the season. Dez wanted to prove what he can do and become a free agent again. He also gets to do it for a contender, which was important to the wide receiver. Turns out a lot of people, including myself, were really wrong about this. Dez tweeted back on August 27th, "I will play ball this year, just might be a little bit later in the year." Declining an offer back in April from the Ravens ended up not biting him in the you-know-what. As far as how this move affects the Saints' offense, Bryant's an additional weapon for Drew Brees, a true partner in crime for Michael Thomas. New Orleans has lacked consistency from a second wideout this season. We'll see how long it takes Dez to get back in the swing of things. Unlikely to be a huge part of the game plan Sunday at the Bengals, 1 p.m. Eastern. But 3 games from now, folks, mark your calendars. November 29th, Saints at the Cowboys on a Thursday night. Dez will have his shot to throw up the X against his old team.
What? Oh, good old Brendan. Sorry. You want to read this? I got it.
Yeah. All right, it's a 10-game slate in the association tonight. Lots of decisions to be made by you at home. And we've got a pretty good trio here to help.
Yes, it's DK Live's Gary and Thorne, RotoWire's Alex Barutha, and Matt LaMarca of the Action Network.
And the name of the game is NBA Pick and Roll, where we give you 2 choices. You pick which one you like best, because you're rolling off the other one.
All right, sounds easy enough. Looking at a couple point guard options within $300 of each other. Toronto's Kyle Lowry, 8,900 at Sacramento, or the Big Easy's Drew Holiday, 8,600 against Chicago. Maddie, a fresh shaven Maddie, take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to go with Drew Holiday here of the 2. It's close, and that's obviously reflected in their price tag, but the fact that it looks like Kawhi Leonard is going to play puts me on Holiday. The difference in playing time between the two guys is just pretty massive right now. We have Holiday projected for 38 minutes in our NBA models, Lowry at just 31.5. Toronto is just so deep that they don't need him as much as the Pelicans need Holiday. So I think both are in good spots. They both have implied team totals that are within, basically 1 point of each other. But I think Holiday is just a little bit safer right now, given the amount of minutes that he's playing.
Alex, you on the Holiday train as well, or are you going to spend the extra $300 for Lowry?
No, I have to agree. I would go Holiday. I mean, both of these guys, been hovering around 40 fantasy points with 50 fantasy point upside. But I mean, the Pelicans, they really need this win. They're 4-6 right now, as opposed to the Raptors 10-1. So I think Holiday will step up to the plate. And with Anthony Davis kind of dealing with this elbow thing, they really need Holiday to be good. So I'll bank on him for my lineup.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and bank on Gary and going with his dude, Kyle Lowry.
It pains me. You guys have put me in a situation where I have to pick against my personal hero, Kyle Lowry, but the answer is Drew Holiday. I mean, it's the Kawhi injury is massive, and that might be the injury we look to in this particular matchup as the biggest news. But the fact that Elfrid Payton is still doubtful for this contest, I mean, Drew Holiday has put up some massive numbers without without Elfrid Payton in the lineup. These last 5 games, averaging 45 DraftKings points across that span, getting over 80 touches per game, 17.2 potential assists without Elfrid Payton in the lineup. The numbers have just been staggering. So I think with the minutes that these guys were talking about, you just have to go with Drew Holiday here.
All right, guys, the question every night when LeBron plays is it a LeBron night?
Yes.
Is it? So you like James at 11K hosting the T-Wolves, or do you want to pay down for Paul George, who put up 52 DK points in his last outing and will cost you $9,100 tonight at Cleveland? Gary, what you doing here?
I don't want to oversimplify this too much, but with no Russell Westbrook, we've seen it already so far this season. Paul George is just hyper-utilized in this offense. His 2 highest usage rates of the season were the first 2 games of the year when Westbrook was unavailable, had a 33.4% usage rate, followed up by a 33.7% usage rate. Those are just massive numbers. And I think, too, this could be a night where Paul George just gets all over the glass. Cleveland has been one of the worst rebounding teams in the NBA across the last 3 and 4 games. Their lineup is super small tonight. They're starting C.D. Osman at the 4. They're moving J.R. Smith to start at the 3. I just feel like this could be a double-double waiting to happen for Paul George at a really high-usage night. So I'm going to side with George here with the savings.
Alex, what do you think? You want to save the money here?
Yeah, I'll choose to save the money. I mean, since the Lakers switched up their starting lineup, LeBron's averaging 47 DraftKings points, and that's over the past 4 games. Over the past 4 games for Paul George, he's also averaging 47 DraftKings points. So when the price difference is that much and you have Paul George going up against, like Gary mentioned, such a poor Cleveland team, I'll take Paul George here.
What are you going to do here with this one? Action, Matt LaMarca.
I think LeBron is tempting. It's a great spot against the Timberwolves. The Lakers have the highest implied team total of the day. But I just don't think LeBron is really all that into basketball right now. He really doesn't appear to be trying very hard. So given the injury to Westbrook, I will agree with these guys and go with PG-13. The Cavs are dead last in defensive efficiency this season. George averaged over 42 DraftKings points in the first 2 games without Westbrook this year, and that was with shooting 32% from the field. So if you can find a few more buckets in this contest, I think he easily could get to 50-plus DraftKings points, which makes him a really nice value at 9,100.
And guys, George Hill has been ruled out for tonight for Cleveland, so that might also.
Oh no.
Yeah. So everybody at home, now you know that. Do you maybe have to change something for later in the show? Breaking news, Jessie Coffield.
You are good at this.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. The highest priced player on the slate, Anthony Davis, 11-6, coming off 31 DK point performance as he continues to deal with the elbow injury. Does that tickle your fancy, Alex? Or how about paying down for Andre Drummond, $9,000? Dude just put up 25 points, 24 boards in his last outing.
Yeah, I'll opt to move to Andre Drummond. A couple of games ago, one of the sideline reporters asked Anthony Davis how his elbow pain was, and he said it hurt to pass, shoot, and dribble. So it's generally not a good sign. And you got Andre Drummond playing the Magic, and 7 of the past 8 times that Drummond has played against Vucevic, he's got double-digit rebounds. So I'll save the money there.
All right, Matty, you going with a banged-up Davis? Any chance?
I love Davis. I think he's primed to break out sometime in the near future. I just don't think I can fit him in tonight. You know, if you look at guys like Paul George and Jimmy Butler, I think they're both priced really fairly. Those are 2 guys that, you know, I want in my lineup pretty badly. And if I go that route, it's basically impossible to get Davis in as well. So with that in mind, I will pivot to Drummond and save a little bit of money. He's just a man among boys right now. He's got 4 20-20 games this season, you know, meaning at least 20 points, 20 rebounds. The rest of the league has 1 combined. It was Enes Kanter in a double overtime game.
Huh.
So in games that stayed in regulation, Drummond is the only guy to do that this season. I think the Magic are a really good opponent. Vucevic, he's allowing opponents to convert roughly 60% from inside 6 feet this year, which is not a good mark. Bottom 10 team in terms of rebounding rate. So all that leads me to say that Drummond is a really strong play.
All right, Gary and Matt's got me sold on pivoting to Drummond. Does he have you sold as well?
Yeah, it's got to be Drummond here. I mean, I love Anthony Davis too, and he could score 80 points on any given night, but there is a little bit of worry right now tied into that injury. And the thing with Drummond too is you want to look for spots where he can just avoid foul trouble, because that's really the only thing that has held Andre Drummond back so far this season. He scored more than 42 DKFP in 6 of Detroit's 9 games so far this season, usually a lot more than that. And the only 3 games he's really been underwhelming, he's gotten into foul trouble. He fouled out against the Bulls. He got 2 quick fouls against Boston. He got 2 quick fouls against Philadelphia, and that really made him suffer for the rest of the night, where, you know, Orlando right now is actually 4th in opponent drawing fouls. They just don't get to the free throw line all that much. So maybe Andre Drummond plays 35 minutes in this contest, doesn't have to go to the bench early in the first quarter because he picks up 2 quick ones. And, you know, that last performance against the Heat was a little outlierish just because Hassan Whiteside wasn't playing. He and Blake Griffin both dominated the glass, but they're right. He's the best rebounder in the NBA. It's hard not to just project a double-double with him every night.
All right, thank you, squad. NBA Tears of Joy is just ahead with you, so don't go too far. We've got some hockey talk to get to as well after Pat Mayo spills the beans on this weekend's PGA Tour contest.
At the very top of the pricing spectrum this week, I was going to say we have Anders Albertson, but we don't. We actually have Ricky Fowler at 11.5. Maybe Albertson should be 11.5 instead of Ricky. Who knows? Spieth is number 2 at 11.3. Finau is $11,000. You also have Woodland and Horschel over 10 grand. Those top 3 guys, Fowler, Spieth, Finau. I think that Finau is most definitely going to be the highest owned of those 3, and I would have a hard time arguing against that. He probably should be.
Yeah. I up in the high end, man. I think I'm going to stick to Fowler out of that whole group. You know, Spieth is definitely iffy off of last week, and Finau, I think he didn't have a decent result at this event. Was it last year or the year before? So I think for me, if I had to spend up over the 10K, and obviously we'll get down into like the 9s and the 8s where there's some pretty good names, but I think the high end, I would just go Ricky Fowler and not really think twice about it. I feel like he's got a good history here. He sets up well, obviously. I definitely like Ricky in this field. Just as far as betting, I'm not going to pay 8-1 on anybody.
Yeah, neither am I, unless it's like Dustin Johnson versus me at the Canadian Open. Then we're fine. Then we can kind of get behind that. I still like Finau a little bit more. I like his scoring upside more. And the one win that little Ricky, a.k.a. Tony Finau, has ever had in his career in Puerto Rico on these similar types of greens. So the slower greens should help him just a little bit, maybe close that gap with Ricky. Ricky played a lot better than Finau did last week, especially in the ball striking department. But I think another week with Finau back over from Asia that he can put a lot of this together. He's not my favorite play from above 10K, but he is the one that I'll be going to secondly. But do you think that he and Fowler will be the 2 high-owned guys and Spieth just won't be owned at all? Because we talked about this last week with Spieth, then all of a sudden Spieth's like 17% owned.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I definitely think Spieth will be the lowest out of those guys. And honestly, I think Finau might be surprisingly under-owned if a lot of people go to Fowler, because I think he's the highest priced guy. He's got good course history, good recent form with all his results. Statistically, he looks great. I think people might shy away from Finau at 11K and go to 11.5 and get Ricky. So I definitely think Jordan Spieth should be lower owned than all those guys, but I'd be surprised if, or I wouldn't be surprised if Tony Finau is lower than you would think.
Now, see, that's great news because I want to have some Tony Finau in my life, so I'm all over that as it pertains to it. One of the other new things that you can find on Fantasy National right now is the historic DraftKings scoring from the tournament. So how many points did these players accumulate and what was their price during that time? So if we look back at last year's, Ricky Fowler was third in DraftKings scoring with 118 DraftKings points. Number 1 was Patton Kizzire. He won. Number 2 was Martin Pillar. Number 4, was number 4. He ended up coming T3 that year. And then Charles Howell III scored 108 points with a T4 as well. But if there's the one thing you notice, if you look at the top 10 in terms of DraftKings points scored, Ricky Fowler was the only one above, I think it's 9.9. He's the only one inside the top 10 that was above $8,900 last year. So it seems to me this is one of the events where if you want to take a more balanced approach, that it might not be the end of the world. Like there's a lot of really good $8,000 players that I think that are more in the mix this week than just going stars and scrubs.
All right, guys, time to talk puck, and who better to do it with than NHL DFS expert Sean Newsham.
Indeed. We're going to need you to help us out here.
Yeah, we do need help. So we're going to give you top players from each position, and you let us know which you prefer to roster tonight on this little 3-game slate.
Alrighty, let's start at center. We've got a great rivalry game. Pittsburgh against Washington tonight, a battle of Evgenis. Do you like the Penguins Malkin for $6,900 here? Cap center Kuznetsov, a little cheaper, $6,700.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean towards Evgeny Malkin here. This is more of a mirror image of each other. These two players are very similar with what they produce statistically over the course of the year in terms of their stats and everything else. The real reason I like Malkin is it sort of looks like Kuznetsov's shot volume is sort of falling off a cliff. In the last 3 games, he's only taken 1 shot per game, and the 2 before that, he only had 2 and 3 respectively. So something to look at with Kuznetsov. In previous seasons, his shot volume was nowhere near what it was at the beginning of the season. It looked like he had sort of changed his habits a little bit. But we've sort of seen it revert in the last week or so. So I'm sort of wondering if that's more of what we can expect. So I think I would take Malkin over Kuznetsov tonight.
All right, well, we're heading to the wings now. NHL scoring leader Mikko Rantanen, I think I said that right,
Close
at
enough.
6.5K for Colorado, or Nashville winger Flip Forsberg at 6.2K. Philip Forsberg at 6.2K. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, for me, this one's pretty easy. Rantanen might be leading the league in points. However, the issue is he just doesn't shoot enough. He only has 27 shots on the entire season, despite having 17 assists. So his numbers are ballooned a little bit currently due to his assist total, whereas his shot volume just isn't quite there from what you would want for a winger at his price point. Phil Forsberg is one of the highest volume shooters in the league and probably the second biggest shooter on the slate tonight behind just Alexander Ovechkin. So for me, I would much rather take the savings and get a guy like Phil Forsberg, who generally will put 3 or 4 shots at least on net per night and gives you a much better chance at a high goal scoring opportunity.
Listen, you'll never be as bad as Brendan Glasheen is.
That's true.
Pronouncing hockey names.
Yeah,
so
that is true.
he's at the bottom of the barrel. All right, time for some defensive talk. West Coast battle going down tonight as the Flames take on the Ducks. Calgary's Mark Giordano at 5,700. Anaheim's Cam Fowler at 5,400. Who do we like?
I'm going to go with Mark Giordano. He is in the 97th percentile in shots plus blocks for defensemen over the last month, which is a very strong number. On top of that, you remove the hat trick that Cam Fowler scored the other day, and his season is extremely pedestrian. He has 5 assists on the season, isn't a volume shooter, does not block a ton of shots. So I think his price currently has risen due to that massive game in which he had a hat trick. So for me, this is a no-brainer. I think Mark Giordano is a much better play.
Last but certainly not least, between the pipes, back to that rivalry game between the Pens and Caps. So Washington has the highest priced goaltender on the slate. They got Braden Holtby at 8,200. Sean, are you paying up for him, or are you going to save some cash with Semyon Varlamov at home versus Nashville for 7.5?
For me, I'm going to go with Holtby here. I think that Holtby has a much better chance at winning the game tonight. Generally, Washington gives up quite a few shots as well, so you should see a reasonable save prediction for Braden Holtby compared to what you might see for Varlamov. And I believe that there's a much better chance that Holtby picks up the win. So for those 2 reasons, I think I would much rather side with Holtby, even though he's a little bit more expensive.
But wait, there's more. before you go, hit us with your slate approved pick, your player that you are rostering no matter what.
So there are some great plays tonight, and especially at the high range. We've already talked about Philip Forsberg. We've talked about the two of Gennies. You have Alexander Ovechkin. What you don't see tonight is tons of value. So for me, I'm going to look for my slate approved lock at the wing, and James Neal is my player. He may not be the most flashy, may not be the most greatest player on the slate, but the real deal is a solid DFS option. His shot total has still been relatively solid this year. His price is just through the floor currently. And the reason for that is he only has 3 goals on the season and no assists. So with those two things factored in, it's really plummeting his price. So when you're really looking at a slate where you want to play top-end guys like Nathan McKinnon, Sidney Crosby, Alexander Ovechkin, you really don't have much else other than the value options. And when you look at the value options, they're kind of bare tonight. So for me, James Neal is my lock of the slate.
All right, Sean, thanks for talking hockey with us. Now, let's hear from Adam Levitan. He's talking strategies for playing in GPP tournaments on his DFS Edge solo pod.
He says, in large GPP tournaments with multiple entries, is it optimal to enter different lineups or use the same lineup? So I think what AMG is referring to here is how viable is a train strategy. For those of you guys that don't know, a train simply means running the exact same lineup multiple times, even many times, in the same tournament. So, and I actually do run trains a lot when I think I have a big edge over the field, like not in NFL or anything like that, where the edges are pretty slim. In other sports where obviously the fields are softest in these small buy-in, big prize pool tournaments with, tens and hundreds of thousands of entries at a small buy. People are doing crazy stuff that makes no sense, playing hurt guys, playing guys who barely see the field or the court or whatever. So I think putting trains into those when I know my teams are so much better on an average level than everybody else's makes sense. Like, for example, in WNBA, I might enter a tournament 150 times, but I would put 5 lineups in 30 times each. Or in preseason NFL, I might put 1 lineup in, 150 times or something like that. Now, is that optimal? Probably not. As I've said so many times on here, with such a large percentage of the prize pool given to first place and really the top 3 places in these tournaments, we should be going for first every time with every lineup we put in. So basically the bottom line is, to answer AMG's question, is no, I don't think trains are optimal, but it can certainly be profitable if you can get 100 teams into the top 500 or the top 1,000 or whatever of these huge tournaments. Certainly an idea.
Well, 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 look who decided to join us. It's everyone's favorite salty Canadian, Jeff Ulrich. What a pleasure. And to liven this segment up a little bit, we brought back Ryan Noonan of the Quant Edge and Anthony Amico from the Action Network. Sorry, Jessie wrote that, not me.
I did not write that. Now let's roll through some NFL high or low. Are these lines too high, too low, or just right? So Jeff, Kansas City, a 16.5-point favorite over the Cardinals. How are we feeling about this one?
Well, Jessie, my former friend.
Wow!
I think this line is all about how many points do you think the Arizona Cardinals can score? Because we know the Kansas City Chiefs are going to rack up a bunch. And if you look at their past games, I mean, the Broncos have been able to keep close. A few other teams. The Browns even kept this within 17 points last week. But is the Cardinals' offense better than the Browns? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think it looks a little bit low. I understand that, it's still a road game and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, again, you need the Cardinals to score some points here to keep this within 17 points. I just don't think they're going to be able to do it enough. They just haven't shown us throughout the year. So I'm going to say it's a little low, to be honest.
Jeff, I didn't write that. All right. Anthony, how do you feel about this line?
I mean, I think it's too high. The Chiefs are winning by an average of 11 points per game right now. They've been awesome, but no Sammy Watkins on Sunday really concerns me. This is someone who owns 17% of team targets and really makes them impossible to defend from a schematic perspective. We already saw Watkins miss some time this year against Denver, and that's when they scored the least number of points that they have all year. They only won that game by 3 points. Cardinals, I think, are arguably better on defense than Denver. They allow less net yards per pass attempt, less yards per play overall. And the Chiefs, showed last week and really all year, they can't defend running backs in the passing game. Arizona coming off a bye. I think they'll really maximize David Johnson in this spot. Chiefs should still win, but I just think 16.5 points is too many. I really like this closer to about 13 or so.
Wow, nobody's really taking the bait on this one. How do you feel about it, Ryan?
Last time we saw a number this big, we saw Buffalo just go up to Minnesota and steal one, which is absolutely insane. Kansas City, though, 8-1 against the number. I am a little bullish. Jeff mentioned the Cardinals and their ineptitude so far this season. With heading into the bye with Byron Leftwich as a new coordinator, I think Josh Rosen is talented, and if they could start to get some more dynamic play calling, I think things could start to emerge there. It's a huge number. I'm probably going to stay away. I think just kind of off the top, though, public service announcement. I mean, Week 9 was a bloodbath for sports books. Lots of big favorites and public teams won outright and covered. So I think just in general this week, if you are looking to, take some underdogs, I think the public is going to lay points again. So wait until as late as you can. Wait until Sunday if you want to take the points, because I think the lines will start to move in your favor.
Solid advice there.
Yeah. All right, well, the Jets are 7-point home favorites against the Bills. Let's keep in mind, though, New York Sam Darnold did not practice today. Will reportedly not play on Sunday. Nooner, is this line on point?
Gosh, I mean, the Jets shouldn't be favored by 7 points against anyone, but how in the world can you back the Bills at this point, regardless of who's the quarterback for either team? I mean, we have Josh Allen, who's got a limited practice, but Nathan Peterman has just been terrible. He's attempted 81 passes this season, has thrown 7 picks, threw a few last week, and his interception rate went down. He's thrown 7 picks this season. That's more than a dozen full-time starters. Both these defenses are fairly decent, both top 7 according to DVOA. They rank top 6 in yards per drive allowed. I'm going to stay away from a side. And even though this number is like 36.5, 37, I don't see either team getting to 20. So I'm probably going to lay on the under here.
Yeah, and Bills fans have actually started a GoFundMe for Nathan Peterman to retire.
Oh, man.
Jeff, how do we feel about this line?
You know, if Sam Darnold was actually starting this game and it looks like he's going to miss, I would actually have been all in on the Bills. The Jets have won a couple fluky games, mainly because of their defense getting these turnovers or just catching opposing quarterbacks in like off weeks. Every other game, they've been brutal. They lost to Miami in like the most horrific way possible last week. Miami's a bad team too, so I just don't understand. Like Ryan, I have no idea how the Jets could be over a touchdown favorite against anyone. Now, I think the line's dropped to 7 since Darnold's been announced probably out, which I don't get because I think Josh McCown is a better quarterback right now and actually gives the Jets a better shot at hitting this number. But no, look, if Josh Allen starts for the Bills, I like the spot for the Bills. I mean, Josh Allen has led them to a couple big upset wins or at least one upset win, and like it kept it close, against a team like the Texans too. So I think this is actually a really good spot to take the Bills, as strange as it sounds. But these are 2 really bad teams. I just think that people don't have the Jets as bad as the Bills because they have it in their mind that they've won a couple of games, and I really do think there's not too much between these teams.
Mr. Amico, are you brave enough to take the Bills?
No, I mean, I'm going to back the Jets here. I think the line's a little low. We know that the Bills are bad, especially if Nathan Peterman does end up starting this game. Then they're just the worst. I mean, they're not even just bad. They're just the worst. I mean, the line is already 6.5 in some spots. And the line movement does seem to be as a result of Sam Darnold not playing. But like Jeff said, Josh McCown is probably better than Sam Darnold right now. I mean, last year he averaged 7.4 yards per attempt with a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. Darnold so far as a rookie, 6.7 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns, 14 picks. So, pretty easy, I think, to argue that the Jets offense is going to be better this week with McCown starting. McCown beat Buffalo at home last year, 34-21, and that's when the Bills were a playoff team. So I kind of think the Jets roll in this spot. I really like them this week.
Yeah, let me just hedge by saying if Nathan Peterman starts this week, just disregard everything I just said.
Okay, fair enough. Just putting that little down there at the end.
Asterisk.
All right, the Colts are 3-point home favorites over Jacksonville. Anthony, you feeling this one?
Yeah, I like Indy. I think the line's a little low here. Both teams are coming off a bye, so no real advantage there. But the Jags are a little depleted on defense. A.J. Bouye is going to be out. The team just traded Dante Fowler to the Rams. And Jalen Ramsey has been bad this year. He's not been good at all. He's grading outside the top 40 in coverage, according to Pro Football Focus. Really don't like that matchup for him against T.Y. Hilton. Meanwhile, the Colts have very quietly morphed into one of the better offensive lines in football. They're 6th in adjusted sack rate allowed, according to Football Outsiders. Haven't given up a sack against Andrew Luck in 3 straight games. Leonard Fournette is back for the Jags, but I'm not really positive that makes them any better like the Colts here.
Ryan, you agree it's a little too low?
Yeah, spot on with what Anthony said. The sack rate is really nice too, with just the short A dots that we're seeing from Andrew Luck. They're getting the ball out so quickly, and really not only their offensive line, but their defensive line has really started to play well as well. So over at the Quant Edge, we have an awesome betting tool. We have this line posted at 5.5 points, and that actually isn't even taking into the home field advantage bump that teams typically see. So Anthony said both teams coming off a bye, so that's pretty neutral. Jacksonville has done a pretty good job limiting short passes and tight ends, which is really where we know Andrew Luck likes to operate. But I still think this is a really nice spot. Blake Bortles just is not playing with the confidence that we saw last year. Obviously, the run game and lack thereof is really hurting him there. And Indy's defense has been pretty opportunistic too. At 18% of their opponents' possessions have ended in a turnover. That's the third highest rate in the league. And we know how turnover-friendly Blake Bortles could be. So I definitely like the Colts here.
Hey, Jeff, everybody seems to think this is a little too low. Do you agree?
I do. Over at the Ulrich Edge, which is just me writing down stuff randomly on a sheet of paper. I also have this game like heavily favored for the Colts, so maybe that's a bad sign. But no, I think Indy is one of the most underrated teams in the league right now. They're getting healthy. They had some major injury issues, but the last 2 weeks they've really taken care of business, especially against the spread. I mean, they've destroyed the 2 weak teams, which they were supposed to do. They covered big numbers. Jacksonville, on the other hand, has been letting people down all year. They've been losing in spots they've been favored in. They haven't been covering spreads. So I think this is actually way too low. I think Indy is getting disrespected by this number, and I expect it to be a little bit bigger.
Jeff, do you have a promo code where I can I can sign up for that?
Yeah, DM me, Jeff. Go ahead and DM me, buddy. Dez Bryant signing with the Saints once he is in the player pool for DraftKings. He will be $4,000, or is $4,000 rather, too high or too low for Dez, Jeff?
This is probably about right, although at the same time, you can't really use him this week. I mean, so maybe he should be lower. Maybe it should be like 3K. I don't know. I don't know. I actually have some hopes for Dez going forward. I think I'm actually a little bit more bullish on him than most people are. I think some people just think he's going to get like one catch a game or a couple targets. I think he's actually could be a real red zone factor. The Saints don't deploy like a dominant tight end or anything, and Dez has made his living in the red zone over his career, especially like as a touchdown sort of target. So I think going forward, Dez is going to be interesting if he stays around this price point. For week 10, if he plays, no thanks.
He's also known to drop a football or two. Dez Bryant, $4,000. Would that be too high? Would it be just right here, Anthony?
I mean, I think it's definitely too high for this week. The guy hasn't even been part of an organization since Dallas released him in April. We have no idea what kind of shape he's in. I mean, obviously he's in good enough shape to get onto the Saints, but the last time we saw Dez on an NFL field, he was terrible. So I'd imagine he sees very little playing time this week, even if he's even active. I'm not going to be considering Dez until November 29th at Dallas. By then, he will have practiced, approximately 10,000 back shoulder throws with Drew Brees. Then we can go all in.
Oh, the revenge narrative. I like that game. It's circled on our calendars. Ryan, what do you think? Too soon to commit to this guy?
Yeah, I mean, 4K, I guess, would be probably a little high, but I'm rather indifferent. I mean, I do think he is washed for the most part outside of perhaps a red zone role like Jeff mentioned. The one thing that I actually kind of think it hurts the Saints passing game, even if he's going to start to play in the slot, that could actually have a negative impact on the passing game. Michael Thomas has been so explosive there over the last few games when they've started to move him more inside into the slot. I mean, on DraftKings with the high PPR volume, I just don't think it's going to be there from Dez week to week. So unless there's another injury here in the pass core, I just don't think that he's really in play for much of the season.
All right.
You got to exit on the calendar, Emerson. Put up the X, buddy. Not the circle for Dez. It's the X.
Oh,
he does the X. Okay.
He's gonna. Yeah. There
you go. Okay.
Add that now. All right.
Nailed it.
Anthony and Ryan, you guys are going to be free to go. Jeff, we need you for some price check coming up. Are you excited?
Fine.
Okay,
You're excited?
good.
Yeah,
that sounded very exciting.
So convincing.
But first, we got to get to NBA Tears of Joy.
Okay.
Time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Brendan Glasheen. Many of you watched Brady versus Rodgers this past Sunday night, so you missed out on the Lakers getting squashed by the Kawhi-less Raptors. LeBron and company have had 2 days to regroup. LA home again tonight, hosting the Timberwolves. It's a DK Captain Showdown Mode contest. Quite a bit has unraveled since the day of the blowout loss to Toronto. Number one, LeVar Ball has reopened his mouth. Lonzo's father says he could coach this Lakers team. Luke Walton's not using Lonzo properly, and LeBron's lucky to have his son. Rips LeBron for missing free throws, blah, blah, blah. What else? Magic Johnson, he's proclaimed Walton's job is safe, and Tyson Chandler is the latest veteran on the cast. Oh, and LeBron, he brought the headband back. If it's there to stay, we don't know. So tonight's game, very intriguing, especially when you factor in the Wolves drama as well. Do you really need me to say his name? Minnesota did get the best of LA back on October 29th, 124-120. No matter how you slice this one, I'd expect the Stars to come ready to go. It feels like desperate times for two alleged Western Conference contenders.
All right, it's good to see you all again. It's good to have these three handsome gentlemen back. DK Live's Gary and Thorne, RotoWire's Alex Barutha, and the Action Network's Matt LaMarca.
We have you guys here to help us pick out who to play in the NBA Tears of Joy contest, focusing on the final three levels. So, Matt, who do you like in Tier 4?
Yeah, this one comes down to Rudy Gobert versus DeAndre Jordan for me personally. Both of these guys feasted on each other the last time they played. Each went for at least 50 DraftKings points, but I'm going to side with DeAndre. If you look at what the Jazz have done against opposing centers this year, it's like maybe the biggest surprise of the season. They've been absolutely terrible against opposing centers. If you look at guys projected for at least 24 minutes, they've outscored their salary-based expectations by more than 7.5 points against the Jazz, which is the second worst mark in the league. So I like Jordan here. I like him in the traditional mode better, where he's significantly cheaper than some of these other guys in the tier, but I'd still think that he would be my choice here in Tier 4.
I mean, Gary, and you got some other names in here. You got, DeAndre Jordan, Trae Young. Any of these guys appeal to you?
I mean, I was a little drawn to Trae Young, I won't lie. I mean, he does have a high usage rate, up around 28%. That game between the Knicks and the Hawks of the players in this tier is the highest implied total we have for the night. But sort of like Matt, I was really just drawn magnetically to this big-on-big matchup between Gobert and between DeAndre Jordan, because you so rarely see these now in the NBA. This just seems like guaranteed minutes for both of these guys, although Gobert never really had a fluctuation in his minutes anyway. He was someone who was predominantly staying on the floor for the Jazz. But I think I am going to take the Gobert side of things here. Matt makes sense with his assessment of their defense, and he looked back even to their last game. I know Serge Ibaka doesn't miss anymore, apparently, but he went 8 for 8, mostly inside the paint against this Utah Jazz defense. But I'm going to bank on, with Donovan Mitchell back in the fold, this offense just flows a little bit better, gives Gobert some easier looks, and he comes out on top here.
Alex, who are you taking from Tier 4?
I do like Trae Young here. Like Gary mentioned, I mean, this matchup has the highest implied total of everyone else in the group here, and it's going to be a ton of possessions. We know that Trae Young can put up 50 DraftKings points. He's done it twice already. He's going to have the ball in his hands all the time. You can get your extra points for 3-pointers, get extra points for double-double. I think he's just in a really good spot tonight.
Alex, while we have you here, Tier 5, take your pick.
I like Mike Conley. This game has I think more important than it was going to be when the schedule was made. I mean, the Nuggets are trying to tie the Warriors right now, essentially, for the best record in the West. The Grizzlies are trying to go up 2 games over 500. Ultimately, the Grizzlies are going to be paced up by the fast play of the Nuggets. So I like Conley here. We know he can get 40 fantasy points. That's not really a question.
Matt, you also have guys like JaVale McGee, Ricky Rubio, Enes Kanter, Julius Randle.
Yeah, I initially had Conley kind of pegged as well, but that game I think is going to be just like a defensive slow-paced slugfest. Like, both of those teams are bottom 6 in pace right now, and both rank in the top 10 of defensive efficiency. So I'm going to pivot over to Julius Randle. I think people may not look at him with Anthony Davis back in the lineup, but his production really hasn't fluctuated much, whether he's in or out. He's averaged 1.37 DraftKings points per minute. Nice matchup against the Bulls, who have been the 7th worst team in terms of defensive efficiency this season. So, Randle may not play a ton of minutes, but when he's on the floor, he's just super productive. So I think he's my choice here.
So, Gary, we've got a Conley, we've got a Randle. You going to give us a third different guy?
No, I'm going to break the tie here. I agree with what Matt is thinking with this Memphis-Denver contest. I mean, the stats bear it out. These are two slow-paced teams who are both good at defense, but I just like the way Mike Conley's been utilized in this Grizzlies offense so far this season. He's averaging career highs in field goal attempts per 36 minutes at 17.9. He's got a career high usage rate up around 29% right now. He seems to sort of be in that veteran point guard archetype that we see with the aforementioned Kyle Lowry, where probably not going to play more than like 32 minutes in this game unless it really does come down to the wire and the Grizzlies feel like they have to pull one out. But I just think Conley probably brings the highest floor here, and I don't want to knock his upside either. I think that's also pretty high.
All right, slate approved pick time. So who's your must play, Matt?
Ooh, I'm going to go with Jonas Valanciunas at 5K. We really didn't have a chance to talk about him, but he's just so cheap. He's exceeded salary-based expectations in 9 straight games, and his salary keeps going down. So I think that on a slate where value is kind of thin, I really like him today.
Okay, Alex, who are you going with? Slate approved.
He may not have much of a ceiling above his price, but I really like Nikola Mirotic here against his former team, the Bulls. Kind of a revenge narrative if you like that sort of a thing, but he's been good for 40 fantasy points essentially all year. And he's 8,300. The matchup would be a fast-paced game regardless, so he would be my choice.
Gary and slate approved.
Yeah, let's stick with that Bulls game. Let's go back to Drew Holiday. I just think it's a great spot. Elfrid Payton's been ruled out for this game since we talked last. His numbers have just looked phenomenal when Payton is unable to take the court. I think he's probably in the mix for 55, maybe even 60 points tonight.
All right, you guys enjoy your evening. NFL Price Check with Reed, Steve, and the jolly old Jeff is next.
Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Jaguars have lost 4 straight, so they could really use a boost this week. Maybe it's a Leonard Fournette return. The second-year running back finally returned to practice this week for the first time in over a month. Fournette was on the field with the first-team offense for an informal Jags session Monday, and ESPN's Michael DeRocco reported he didn't display any visible limitations. Fournette reclaims his title as lead back should he come back, but we know how that can go. TJ Yeldon, Carlos Hyde, they're not all of a sudden just going to disappear. The LSU product cost $6,300 versus the Colts, a team that is slightly above average at stopping the run. Indy also hasn't allowed a single running back to rush for 100 yards or more. Great to see Fournette back out on the gridiron, but you're better off fading him, even so, if he returns.
All right, last block of the show, and all of you at home have earned this. A DK Live trio. Bless them. Reed Fowler, Steve Buchanan, Jeff Ulrich.
Wow, what a trio. And say hello to NFL Price Check, a super special running back edition. So are the following players priced right for Week 10? We have no idea, so you need to tell us. Reed, Todd Gurley at 9,500 against the Seahawks, coming off a season low, under 20 fantasy points. Ooh, is the price right?
Yeah, I think he's actually at 9,400, but even then, even like at that price, right, this is probably going to be his floor at that price. Well, we've seen him get upwards to 9,800, and more so than last week where he went up against the #1 rush defense. I like him a little bit more in terms of the matchup. Seattle is ranked 15th in rush DVOA, but we've seen this game really get out of hand in terms of the number. He had 3 touchdowns last time these teams met, and so at 9,400 or at that price tag in terms of being off that bad game that we saw last week, I don't mind it, but there is a ton of value on the slate for running backs, so you don't have to pay up for this guy, but if you want to, this guy is pretty safe in terms of what he can get you at that 25 to 30 DK fantasy point floor, so I don't mind it at all.
How long you been looking at that number? You just wanted to wait till we were on the show to say 94.
I think he has a putter in the background.
Steve, take it away, please.
I mean, are we done? Can I talk now? I mean,
We're done for now.
Look, he's a player that even excuse me, even after that horrible game last week, he's still averaging over 30 DK fantasy points on the year. I don't think you can realistically make him any cheaper without an uproar from the masses because everyone's just going to play him. I mean, his matchup isn't great, but you know, this is a home game where you're favored by 10. So, I mean, you have to like the upside for Gurley in this matchup here. And I've said it before multiple times this week already. The Seattle defense doesn't look all that impressive to me. They've been making a lot of mistakes lately. They just don't look like that solid defense we saw in the beginning of the year. So I absolutely don't mind paying up that price for Gurley. He gives you one of the safest floors on the slate, in my opinion.
Jeff, 9,400. How do you feel about that price tag?
I think it's too cheap. I mean, it's kind of coming off what Steve said. He's still averaging like 30 DK points a game. I mean, so he had one game where he only got 19 points. He's destroyed Seattle the last couple of years, and Seattle is regressing. Like I feel like this Earl Thomas injury is finally catching up with them. Even on offense, it just looks like they're slowly regressing to the mean, which is they're kind of a mediocre to below average team, in my opinion. So I think this is too cheap for Todd Gurley. And I think when you look at him, too, from a price perspective, like Melvin Gordon's $9K, Kareem Hunt's way up there. And I know Kareem Hunt has a good match. He's been going off, too. But, you know, Todd Gurley all of a sudden gets decreased just because he only scored 20 fantasy points. I think this is something you take advantage of. And it's going to be interesting to see if people's recency biases still keeps his ownership low this week.
James White, I can confirm, 7,300 at Tennessee. Is he worth the price of admission here, Jeff, who is tied with Steve as my favorite analyst?
I mean, this obviously almost all comes down to whether Sony Michel was active this week. It looks like he's going to return for the Patriots. At least that's what the early word is. So if we assume that Michel's back, and then you look at the matchup against Tennessee, who's, you know, like a top 10 team in terms of limiting running back production, and they just play at a slow pace too. You can't really like this price for James White. And I know his usage has been absolutely insane, and people saying, I don't take, he's too expensive now, have been getting burned left and right. But I think we've kind of come to the climax here where, you know, with him still splitting carries and not getting goal line work with Sony Michel back now, it's just not a good scene at 7,300, at least not against the Titans. So I think this is way too much. It's just, again, I don't think it's taking into account the Sony Michel factor this week.
Reed.
Yeah, as my two lesser favorite people in that studio, Samir and Axel being my two favorite, you got to like this guy is a cash game lock, right? Because of his floor, and we've seen it. We've seen it with Sony Michel that this guy has a safe floor. But Jeff's right. At that price tag, we just don't know, right? We don't know what Cordero Patterson's potentially going to do, where they might vulture some goal line touches. And so in terms of his ceiling, it's capped a little bit at this price tag, which again, in GPPs, like Steve mentioned, we only really play GPPs, which is kind of stupid. You know, he's not necessarily a lock. So for cash games, I love it in terms of that matchup because, like we talked about earlier, there are better places to exploit against that Tennessee defense. And so GPPs don't like this price at all.
We're a little short on time here, and Emerson wants to try something new. So we're just going to sort of jump around with these questions. So Adrian Peterson, Steve, 5,700 at Tampa. How does this make you feel?
I mean, I had some great stuff on James White, but whatever.
Bring it
we'll
up
just go to
with
Peterson.
Emerson.
I mean, look, the problem with Peterson from last week is that the Falcons just blew the doors off the Redskins, so it wasn't a game for Peterson. I mean, he doesn't get any work in the passing game. I mean, yeah, 3 targets a game. I mean, if you really call that work, he's been getting. But, I mean, look, in games that the Redskins have won, he's averaging 20.5 DK fantasy points. In losses, 6.8 DK fantasy points. So he is 100% game script dependent here, and this is a game where he could get some work. And I mean, the Bucs are bad all around. They're not the worst against the run, but for a $300 dip in salary in a game where the Redskins should realistically still be in this game till the end, yeah, I definitely like Peterson in this spot. He's priced perfectly.
Jeff, AP at 5,700. How do you feel about it?
The Washington O-line is banged up, and Steve's right. I mean, look, if they get off to a lead, sure, he's got upside, but I still think it's a little bit too expensive to take a shot on him personally. I just don't really like the setup.
Reed, what do you think about Jordan Howard, $4,700 facing Detroit after a season high, nearly 17 fantasy points? Priced right?
Yeah, I don't mind it. Detroit is pretty bad against the run at 4,700. Like Tariq Cohen is at 5,500. I like that a lot better because Howard is a RB2 touchdown dependent type player, right? He could get game script out of it. We've seen it. Cohen has more upside. I like that play a lot more.
Steve, do you like Howard at this price?
Well, you should ask Julian how Jordan Howard did last week in the Put Up Rebuke segment. He failed on that one with Duke Johnson. But look, it's still kind of crazy that a guy who scored twice only had 16.7 DK fantasy points. He just does nothing else on the ground. So if he's not scoring, he's just not getting you the points. I think this is more of a Cohen game. Like
he had the best game script possible last week and only got 17 points. It's not getting any better. So no, just no. Basically.
4 targets in the last 5 games total. That's terrible.
Wow, we got through all the price checking we needed to. Thank you,
Thanks,
Emerson.
Emerson. Hey, all I'm
Emerson.
saying is we've got Aiden and other guys back there who are working their tails off in these graphics. Let's show them.
Yeah, you're right. We did show them.
Like,
we show them on
it.
the sweat. I'm Jessie. He's Emerson. We do this show 6 o'clock on weeknights. I guess Emerson's pretty much done now. There's a chair here if you guys didn't know about it. But we'll be back tomorrow at 6, and we hope to see you there.